Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause, and there's this journalist that by the name of Benjamin Wittes, and I want to go over some of what he tweeted. He went on this tweet storm, or whatever you call it, and he's talking about an article that was released in the New York Times, I think it was, and so it's about collusion, and he's annotating all of these collusion articles, and the guy's a total tool that's purposely misleading the public. So I wanted to go through how he's annotating this, and some people like it, but when I actually commented about the facts, not too many people got back. Like 3 or 4 got back, and all they were doing was attacking me for being a men's rights activist, and none of them had any responses for, my counter arguments. So let's get into this. Okay, folks, since people seemed to appreciate my annotation of yesterday's collusion story, here are some thoughts on today's. And it's like, God, what is this going to be a running thing where every day there's a new collusion story? It says, first, note the sourcing. This is clearly not an investigative leak. This is a set of White House admissions in response to the story. Now, whenever people do this, they'll take a statement and they'll, highlight part of it. Always read the surrounding text, because that's important a lot of times, but it's stuff a lot of times that they don't want you to read. So it says, President Trump's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., was promised damaging information about Hillary Clinton before agreeing to meet with a Kremlin-connected Russian lawyer during the 2016 campaign, according to 3 advisors to the White House briefed on the meeting and 2 others with knowledge of it. Okay, so the reason it's not an investigative leak, most likely, is because this isn't damning of collusion. If it was damning of collusion, they wouldn't be talking about it. It says, see also the 3D graph on this point, which is important because we're about to hear a lot about hashtag fake news. It's the principal speaking. The Times reported the existence of the meeting on Saturday, but in subsequent interviews, the advisors and others revealed the motivation behind it. And here's the interesting thing here is, so he's bringing up fake news because he's providing it. He is misleading his viewers and his readers. And now he's going to be like, okay, so you're going to hear about fake news. Yeah, well, they will hear about fake news because you're providing fake news. And, not just you, but the articles you're talking about are providing fake news. And you know it. So this is a preemptive strike to try to counter, because then people will read this and they'll be like, when the fake news argument comes, they're ready for it. And they'll be like, oh, they're just as Benjamin predicted. Well, there's a reason he predicted it, because he knows he's being dishonest. The date on this meeting may actually be exculpatory to Trump in one way. Why? It predates the disclosures, I think, of Russian hacking. Well, then what's the problem? The meeting at Trump Tower on June 9th, 2016, 2 weeks after Donald J. Trump clinched the Republican nomination, points to the central question in federal investigations of the Kremlin's meddling in the presidential election. Whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. The accounts of the meeting represent the first public indication that at least some in the campaign were willing to accept Russian help. Notice what they're doing here. They haven't established that there's any sort of Kremlin connection. All they've said is that there's a quote-unquote Kremlin-connected, unnamed, so far, and that this lawyer, this Kremlin-connected lawyer, how they're connected to Russia, we don't know, or to the Kremlin, we don't know, but they're a Russian lawyer. But it never actually says a Kremlin lawyer, and that distinction is very important, because now we can simply be talking about a citizen of Russia that happens to be a lawyer, speaking as a private citizen to Donald Trump Jr. about Hillary Clinton. That's not fucking collusion. Someone should check me on that point, working from memory here, but they may have a case that any Russian email releases came later. Why don't you fact check your own fucking point? I mean, come on. You're supposedly a journalist by your own biography. See, it says senior fellow at Brookings, editor-in-chief, lawfare. You call it the deep state. I call it readership. Oh, sorry, he doesn't have it here. But in his Wikipedia, it says he's a journalist. This graph is devastating, however. It shows that the Trump folks were willing to cooperate with Kremlin in exchange for dirt on Hillary. Again, never established this lawyer was Kremlin. Being a Russian citizen does not make you a part of the fucking Kremlin. This is pure dishonesty. This is not an accident. It is unclear whether the Russian lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, actually produced the promised compromising information about Mrs. Clinton, but the people interviewed by the Times about the meeting said the expectation was that she would do so. So we're not even talking about something she did. We're talking about something that someone said that was planned on being done. That never actually happened. I mean, and this is supposedly evidence that... Let's go through this. We're talking about something someone said, some Russian somehow connected to the Kremlin, but not actually proven to be a part of the Kremlin, met with Donald Trump Jr. for some reason that hasn't actually been proven to have actually happened. In fact, it probably didn't happen. He didn't get any dirt on Hillary Clinton, most likely. So it sounds a little ridiculous when I say it like that, doesn't it? And this is what they're trying to argue should be used against Trump for impeachment. Are you fucking kidding me? This graph is also devastating. Trump Jr. admits that his only interest in the meeting was the dirt the Russians might provide on Clinton. Now let's read this, because in my opinion, what he's saying this proves, it doesn't prove at all. So in a statement on Sunday, Donald Trump Jr. said he had met with the Russian lawyer at the request of an acquaintance. After pleasantries were exchanged, he said, the woman stated that she had information that individuals connected to Russia were funding the Democratic National Committee and supporting Ms. Clinton. Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense. No details or supporting information was provided or even offered. It quickly became clear that she had no meaningful information. He said she then turned the conversations to adoption of Russian children and the Magnitsky Act, an American law that blacklists suspected Russian human rights abusers. The law so enraged President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia that he retaliated by halting American adoptions of Russian children. That was a big story for a little while. You might even remember that happening in the news. It was all over. It became clear to me that this was the true agenda all along, and that the claims of potentially helpful information were pretext for the meeting, Mr. Trump said. So, there's nothing in here that says that, this was all, that the Clinton information was all he was interested in. Now, maybe you can draw that conclusion, possibly, but there's not enough evidence here to come to that conclusion, especially if you're going to make something like actionable for, treason or collusion or something like that. I mean, you need more than this. And basically all that you have is that he is saying this was a pretext for the meeting. But remember, he wasn't even directly contacting her. Someone had contacted him about the meeting, and we don't actually know what he was told about why he was going to the meeting to talk to this girl. So then we go on, and it says, this is very interesting graph. POTUS denies knowledge that Trump Jr.'s statement clears both Manafort and Kushner. Jr. takes the fall. Well, this, first of all, assumes faultily, in my opinion, that there is a fall to take. So now you're starting to get into where you haven't really built up the base that you think you've built up, or that you're trying to project that you've built up. Because I think he knows that his argument doesn't hold water. And now he's trying to build off of the holes. And the foundation is rocky. It can easily come crumbling down. So the more we build this up, actually more likely from that we're getting from the truth. It's like ancient alien style of logic. Well, if this is true and this is true, then this, and this. Well, none of that other stuff is true because your original base wasn't true. So he says, Mark Corallo, a spokesman for the president lawyers, said on Sunday that the president was not aware of and did not attend the meeting. Lawyers and spokesmen for Mr. Kushner and Mr. Manafort did not immediately respond to requests for comment. In his statement, Donald Trump Jr. said he asked Mr. Manafort and Mr. Kushner to attend, but did not tell them what the meeting was about. All right, so all the stuff that Kushner and Manafort, have been colluding and treasonous, this does nothing to damn them. And there's been no evidence really to get them in any sort of serious trouble up to this point. And, this does all fall on Donald Trump Jr. But remember, he was told by somebody else to meet with this lady. And we don't know what he was told on why he was meeting with her. Meanwhile, the Russian lawyer in question is still denying that there was any campaign discussion at all, which Trump Jr. now contradicts. Ms. Veselinskaya said in a statement Saturday that nothing at all about the presidential campaign was discussed. Okay, if you buy her word, they weren't discussing the presidential campaign. She recalled that after about 10 minutes, either Mr. Kushner or Mr. Manafort walked out. She said she had never acted on behalf of the Russian government. Oh, so she hasn't been speaking on behalf of the Russian government. Okay, so she's speaking as a private Russian citizen? Is that what we have going on here? So this isn't collusion in any way? And never discussed any of these matters with any representative of the Russian government. So unless you throw her argument out, none of this shows collusion at all. And he certainly has not hung himself in any way. She also denies having acted on behalf of the Russian government. That's all I got in this one. As with yesterday's thread, it's worth what you paid for it. I mean, there's nothing here. And he's being a misleading fuck, trying to tell people that, trying to lead people to believe that, there's something about Trump collusion and Junior treason and possibly Manafort and all that, Kushner treason, and that Junior's taking the fall for them. Well, no, there's no fall to take. They're open about this because no wrongdoing happened. Do you really think they'd be saying all this if there was all this wrongdoing going on? Hell no. This is the most... I couldn't think of a way that this could come down more obviously that there was no wrongdoing. Unless we're introduced to more facts, you've got nothing. Move on. Accept your loss and move on. Trump is the president. It's going to stay that way. Have a good one, guys.